Hi, I'm Zachary, Cowan, the author of the Study Daily Books, and thanks for joining me for a look at Doctrine and Covenants, section 28. So this section is the first real challenge Joseph had as a leader of the church. Like, he's had some other persecution, but now it's not coming from outside of the church, it's kind of coming from within. Hiram Page, one of the 8 witnesses, and a brother-in-law to the Whitmers, he's got a stone. And through this stone, he's been getting revelation, similar like Joseph Smith has been getting. So the Whitmers are like, oh, this is just how revelation is getting. See, there was no order at that time. There wasn't an understanding of who gets revelation for the church and where you can get revelation for. Is this personal revelation or is this revelation for the whole community? They didn't get that. So Hiram Page is cranking out all of these revelations, sheets upon sheets, like he's got a stack of them. And some of them don't always line up with what's been said in the New Testament or in the Book of Mormon or in other revelations. The other hard thing is many of Joseph's revelations, they're not written down yet. Like, they're written down, but nobody can look them up. They don't have a Doctrine and Covenants. So there's confusion on these things. All right, so I want you to go ahead, and even Oliver Cowdery was taken away by some of these things. So I'm going to have you go ahead and pause your video. You're going to look at Doctrine and Covenants, section 28, verses 1 through 7, and look for what the Lord teaches Joseph Smith, his role is in the church, and what does the Lord teach Oliver Cowdery, his role is in the church. Notice that these roles don't diminish Oliver. Just because his role is different and his responsibilities, his calling is different, it doesn't diminish him. So go ahead, check out verses 1 through 7, and look for what Oliver and Joseph's roles and responsibilities are in the church. Thanks for studying. Hope you had a great look. So one of the things we learn is that Oliver is to teach by wisdom and to write by wisdom and not by commandment. Joseph's job is to give commandments to the entire church. That's his thing. When he's with people, absolutely, as the second elder of the church, he can teach by commandment because in that moment, when a person is influenced by the Holy Ghost, that becomes a commandment to them. But that's not written down and transferred on. What's transferred on is the written commandments that the Lord is going to give through Joseph. And you get this really important thing that in verse 6 and 7, you don't command above you, your head, like revelation. Yes, you can get personal revelation for what you need to do, but also you don't look up and say, like, you know what, this is what the bishop needs to do. There can be counsel there and given, and then it's confirmed. But we don't try to give the prophet of the church the commandments because that will come from God. We give him counsel, absolutely that comes. And then the commandments come. Because verse 7, Joseph has the keys. And this is important because later on when Joseph dies, there's some confusion about who's going to lead the church. And it becomes apparent that Brigham Young and those who are with him realize it has to be the person who holds the keys. And that's the quorum of the 12 apostles. They're the only leaders that go forward that have the keys to be able to do it. In verses 8 through 10, the Lord then calls Oliver Cowdery on a mission to the Lamanites. This is going to totally change the church because of some of the people he's going to go with. We'll talk about this later with the revelation with Parley P. Pratt that's coming up. But the interesting thing is that the Lord said, I want you to go on the border and teach the Lamanites. This is like Missouri. Now, early on in the church, they believed that all Native Americans were descendants of the Lamanites. The church's position on that has changed over the years. They believe that the Nephites, the Lamanites, are among the principal ancestors, but not necessarily the only ancestors. Just understanding that distinction allows us to view things differently. We're not claiming that the only way that Native Americans got here is because of Nephites and Lamanites. No, we understand that there's lots of other ways that they came through. And because of this, there's been some DNA studies suggested both in support of Nephites and Lehites among Native Americans and also against it. That the church has been really cautious and said, be careful. You can't use DNA study to prove or to disprove the Book of Mormon because it is a complex issue. The church even has an essay on this. So under the church history section in your gospel topic library, you can find a section called gospel topic essays. And then you can find one, DNA in the Book of Mormon. And it goes through tons of reasons about why we need to be cautious against arguments against this DNA study, against those who say, look, there's no Nephite and Lamanite blood among them. There's none of that. And also arguments for it because there's both. And we just need to be cautious. So those verses are fantastic. Now for the really hard part. In verses 11 through 16, Oliver has to go be a leader of the church. So go ahead, pause your video, Check out verses 11 through 16 and look for what the Lord expects leaders to do when there's misunderstanding, miscommunication, maybe even some misteaching of doctrines. All right, see you in a minute. Hey, thanks for studying. I hope you had a great look in there. If you were Oliver, would you feel uncomfortable about going to Hiram Page and saying, hey, what you've received is not correct? That can be really tough to correct somebody. And yet, sometimes that's the case with leaders of the church. And we have to be careful on this. If you're in a leadership position, you're probably going to have to issue correction and coaching at some point. And if you've ever been in the church, there's probably times that you're going to need some correction and coaching. Now, this doesn't mean we go around and we do this. There is a specific way to do it. Notice that the Lord said, go talk to him by yourself. Why? So there's not so much pressure. There's not so much pride. There's not so much ego coming into this. That can be a really hard thing. It can be really difficult. In fact, what are the things that need to be right in Oliver's heart in order for this correction to be seen as a blessing? And what are the things that have to be right in the heart of Hiram Page in order for this correction to be seen as a blessing and not a punishment? These are important questions to know because those same things happen between a husband and wife, between a wife and a husband, between a parent and a child. There has to be correction because we don't want to remain in error, but also we don't want to do it in such a way that we hurt or offend them. It's not about correcting the person so much as it is an instant in helping them and coaching them and pointing out things. That becomes a crucial thing. And to do it by the power of the Holy Ghost. If both people can retain the Spirit, great things happen. We know that Oliver does approach Hiram Page and that it works out okay. Hiram remains. Both of them, their hearts are okay. Oliver's heart was softened when Joseph approached him and corrected him. And then Hiram Page's heart was softened when Oliver approached him. May our hearts be softened when we receive some correction, some coaching, and some help, and view it as that, even if it's said with a little bit of a sharp tongue. And may we, if we have to do some coaching and correcting, may we do it with the Spirit of the Lord. Hey, thanks for studying. We'll see you next time as we look at Doctrine and Covenants section 29.